Split pushing has been around for as long as League of Legends has existed, and the playstyle has come and gone in multiple forms. All from Jax pushing one lane for an eternity, to Sion dive bombing towers and dying to use his passive. Big names like Trick2G helped to pioneer split pushing in the early days of League, building a completely different approach to how they play the game. But while he did that mostly playing Udyr, different champions have been just as or even more successful for that task, and today we will rank them based on 5 different criterias, which are must-have for this role, and they go as follow. Number 1. 1v1 ability. Being able to fight an opponent in lane and having a high chance of winning and continuing your goal of split pushing. Number 2. Sustain or an escape. Being able to stay in lane way longer than your opponent and basically forcing them out of lane or being able to easily escape an ambush. The third criteria is being able to overpower an opponent and basically make any resistance towards you basically impossible. The fourth criteria is wave clear, and the faster you clear the wave, the faster you can get to the tower. And the fifth and final one is tower taking ability, simply how quickly you can take a tower once you get to it. And without all that out of the way, let's head straight into the tier list. So I'm gonna move my way from the F rank to the S rank and give a small explanation to why I put a certain champion in each rank. And to start off, we have the F tier, and we're gonna put Kayle here. Now, Kayle is a late game scaler and really good in a side lane once you get to your your ideal position. You have items, you have out-leveled the other opponent, you're stronger, but you lack mobility, you lack instant wave clear, and you take too long to ramp up. The second one that we're gonna choose is also someone that is strong in a side lane, but doesn't have all the necessary qualities to place him higher up, and that's Jayce. Does a lot of early game damage, is really good at one-shotting or poking someone off the lane, but troubles with sustain is what brings him into the lower ranks. And right next to him is someone who's very similar, has more mobility but is very squishy and lacks the same sustain. We're gonna place Quinn. Quinn is really good at catching people out and doesn't really fulfill the ideal role of a split pusher. She is more of a push the wave out and find the rotation from the enemy team and kill that person, instead of one that stays in lane and pushes. I'm also gonna place Gnar here, because while he has some sustain, some fight in him, because of how his passive works, he is not always in an ideal position to fight. And because of that, if he could control when to go Mega Gnar and when to be mini Gnar, that would bring him up a place or two. But because you can basically force him to use his Mega Gnar, he can easily be controlled, and he loses his ability to overpower an opponent. He doesn't have the best sustain or the best 1v1 ability. He's good at all of those, but not the best. And beside him, we are gonna place Illaoi. Now Illaoi have the sustain, she has the wave clear, but her 1v1 ability is so much centered around her E. And if you can dodge her E and you have any type of healing reduction, then you can easily survive her ult and push her out of lane. Aatrox is placed in D tier as well because of the same reasons as Illaoi. If you have healing reduction, you can survive him. If he doesn't hit his small Q parts, which gives him extra damage or increased healing, he's quite easy to beat in a 1v1, which removes the first criteria of 1v1 ability. Now he has a lot of sustain, he has good escapes, good dash over walls. His wave clear takes too long, and his tower taking ability is good with his E auto attack resets, but it takes too much to make Aatrox work well in a side lane. Right beside him we have Darius for the same reasons. Decent wave clear, decent sustain, tower taking ability is really good, but because he is so immobile, and you can easily beat him if you wait out his stacks, his passive stacks, then he can't really beat the champions that are above him after a certain point. And the last one that I'm gonna place in D tier is Sett. Now Sett has really good 1v1 ability. He has decent sustain, decent wave clear, really good tower taking ability. The only thing that keeps him in C tier, for now at least, is because he shares some weaknesses alongside his fellow D tier companions. It's quite easy to beat him in a 1v1 if you avoid the W damage or the grit. Someone like Camille can easily wait until he has used his Q movement speed, until his grit falls off, and if you're good enough at the game, you can easily play around a Sett in the side lane. Moving to C tier, the first one I'm gonna place is Shen. Now Shen is decently tanky with Titanic and a Bamis Cinder item, has decent wave clear. His tower taking ability is really bad, and his sustain is practically non-existent outside of fight, because he heals from fighting someone, doesn't really heal off of the minions. His escape is decent as well, and his 1v1 ability is not great. The reason he is not in D tier is because he has this amazing ult that can create pressure while being in the side lane. He can create pressure in a team fight that's happening across the map. So that is a reason, or the sole reason, for why he is not in D tier when it comes to soul split pushing ability. And alongside him is also Gangplank, much for the same reason. Gangplank has amazing wave clear, has good sustain in lane, decent 1v1 ability with barrels, is relatively safe standing on top of a barrel, and the only thing that keeps him down from not being in B tier is that he is quite squishy, and you can easily overpower him if you avoid or time out his barrels. Joining him is gonna be Dr. Mundo. Tower taking ability is good, wave clear is decent, uses the same tactics as Shen, just slightly slower. He doesn't build Hydra, he just out tanks the minions. His 1v1 ability is great because he's hard to kill, but his escape is not that great. Any champion in the A and S ranks will be able to beat him, except for one, which I'm gonna show later. which is also the weakest out of the A ranks. Next to Dr. Mundo, we have Volibear. Great at pushing waves, especially with the AP build. Great at taking towers, has a great 1v1. Sustain is heavily dependent on fighting someone, marking him with W, and making sure that you dive. This is also a Quick 2G favorite for now, and lots of high elo Koreans use Volibear to be a menace in the side lanes. In theory, you could place a Volibear a bit higher, but once you see what champions are up here, then you start to figure out that they beat him in the side lane. We're gonna place 2 now at the same time, and they will be for the same reason. They are extremely good, both of them, at creating pressure, but their 1v1 ability is lacking in a side lane outside of like a team support. They are quite easy to find and kill, especially if they are the same level and have the same amount of items as the champions above them. And the first example of that is gonna be someone like Mordekaiser. Mordekaiser on first glance should probably be lower, but because of his tools, if you were to collapse on him, he has quite an easy way of removing himself from that position with his ult, winning a team fight and coming out of that, or not winning a team fight, winning a 1v1 and coming out of his ult to team fight really, really strong with extra bonus stats. His wave clear is really good, his sustain is really good, and you can go the more attack speed oriented build with the Riftmaker and Nashor's Tooth, and that will make you pound turrets very, very fast. And he beats tanks in general. So any tank that is placed below him, like Shen, Mundo, Gnar, he beats quite easily if you know what you're doing. And joining him is also going to be Renekton, because he has all of the tools that we are looking at today, all the 5 criterias. 1v1 ability, great. Sustain and escape, great. Ability to overpower an opponent, great. Wave clear, amazing. Tower taking ability is where he falls short, and also that the champions above him usually have more than enough tools to deal with him later on in the game. If this was a tier list that stops around the 20-minute mark, Renekton would be S tier, in my opinion. Joining him for the same reason in B tier is going to be Riven. Also really good in all criterias, but lacks one in particular, which makes her not be A tier and instead B tier, which is Sustain. Sustain has always been Riven's weak point, as she excels in basically everything else. She can have a quite tough time with tanks because she can't kill them as fast, but she won't really die to them. Her safety is probably her best feature, and her ability to dictate when she wants to take a fight and when she wants to leave is also something really good for her. Now another one in B tier, surprisingly enough, is gonna be Singed. Now Singed is a weird one to rank. His tower taking ability is next to nothing. He is really bad at taking towers. He doesn't have a auto attack steroid. He doesn't have anything that goes for him. He can't really outpower an opponent that easily. His wave clear is not fast. It's extremely effective, but not fast. his 1v1 ability is also similar to one of Shaco's. If you don't really want to fight with him, you can easily just walk away. And that is sort of what makes Singed a bad champion. But why is he so high up then? He has an extremely easy time of just walking through towers, taking a wave or 2 waves and creating massive amounts of pressure, because the number 1 rule in League of Legends is you do not chase a Singed. And knowing that, he can easily control the pace of a split push and make sure that you either have to chase him and his team takes control of the game, or you don't chase him and he can easily control 1 or 2 lanes at the same time. It's a hard one to place, but I think I have done it correctly so far. He does more pressure in a side lane than any one of these below him. Next to him is gonna be 2 champions, much for the same reason, Aurelia and Wukong. Now, 1v1, they are great. Sustain and escape, great. Ability to overpower opponent, great. Wave clear is where they sort of fall short. None of them have an easy way of completely one-shotting a wave. And their tower taking ability is also good enough. But the champions above them have an extremely easy way of dealing with them, and that prevents them from being into A tier. And the way that they are in the order doesn't really matter. Like, Mordekaiser is not better than Renekton, and Renekton is not better than Riven. They are sort of just placed randomly here. But moving now into A tier, we are gonna have our first one, which is gonna be Trundle. Now, Trundle's wave clear is nothing special. His ability to overpower an opponent is also nothing special. His 1v1 ability is pretty good. His sustain and his escape is fantastic. And his tower taking ability is probably the fastest in the game. Outside of maybe like an infinite amount of NASA stacks or whatever. Once Trundle reaches a tower, that tower is gone instantly. He beats out tanks quite easily. He out-sustains someone like Riven, Wukong, Aurelia, Renekton easily. Yasuo, Yone, GP is generally too squishy for them to handle Trundle, and all of these guys below him usually lose out because he is really good at building armor and being hard for them to kill. Beside him is gonna be Garen. Now, Garen has all of the 5 criterias in his pocket, but he is quite easy to play around once you need to face him 1v1. He doesn't have any mechanic that lets him get on top of you quite easily. He sort of has to run at you in a stupid way, and you need to be stupid enough to fight him for him to be effective. Without that, he would probably place a lot lower down, but because he has an easy time of clearing waves, he has an attack speed steroid with his E, which makes him clear a lot faster. His Q is an auto attack reset. He takes towers extremely fast, and he generally has an easy time in a 1v1 because of how simple he is to play. That is why I place him in A tier. And beside him is going to be another tank, Sion. Now, Sion is also one of the weird ones to place. He's sort of like Singed. His 1v1 ability is actually really bad because he has to hit his E in order to guarantee his ult and his Q damage. Without his E, he's useless. His sustain is nothing special. His escape is usually him either slowing you and running away or just ulting away. And his ult is probably his greatest asset outside of his passive. His ability to overpower an opponent is also sort of weird. If you go lethality, you can probably ambush people from a bush. But what makes him place so highly is his tower taking ability, because his ult actually deals damage to towers. So he can ult into the close range of a tower, it deals damage to it. If he dies, he can use his passive to pound on the turret. And because of how gold efficient he is, he can usually die 10, 12, 13, 15 times in the game, and it probably doesn't matter for his mission of split pushing. So that's why he places this highly. Now, the next one is going to be Camille. And many people would say that Camille is S tier in split pushing because of how good she is. But the reason she is going to be in A tier is because when you see the characters or the champions in S tier, you will see that they have an easy way of beating Camille, and that's why they can't be in the same rank. Now, Camille has everything outside of one thing: wave clear. Her wave clear is pretty trash. Her tower taking ability is amazing. Her sustain and escape is amazing. 1v1. She's probably one of the only champions in the game that can easily one-shot a tank with true damage. And she's generally just a really good champion to TP with. When you see Camille TPing, even if you're like 1.5 screens away from the ward that she's using to TP on, you generally feel pretty unsafe versus someone like say Illaoi were to TP. You would probably think to yourself you have a couple of seconds to react. And right beside Camille is gonna be Fiora. Fiora is also one that you can consider an elite split pusher, but in the same way as Camille, the champions above her beat her. Now, I'm pretty unsure of where to place Gwen, because split pushing in general from the top lane perspective is generally very AD dependent, and Gwen is an AP champion, and I think that she has what it takes to out DPS someone like Mordekaiser, Renekton, Riven, Singed, and she can probably out DPS one or two S tier characters. But because I'm unsure, the safest bet is to place her in A tier. And basically all of these champions she can beat, but they have an easier time playing the game past 20 minutes than she does. And the first one that I'm gonna place in S tier is gonna be Yorick. Now, Yorick has a really good 1v1 ability. His sustain is amazing. His escape is pretty meh at best. His ability to overpower an opponent is amazing. His wave clear is pretty dog shit outside of Titanic Hydra, but his tower taking ability is with Trundle like next to none. Once Yorick reaches the tower, it's over. And joining him in that is gonna be Nasus, in no particular order. 1v1 ability, Nasus pops R, pops Ghost, runs you down. Ironically, he runs you down like a dog while being a dog. Tower taking ability, amazing. Wave clear later on in the game, amazing. Especially if you do the 3 points in E early, then you get amazing wave clear very, very early. Ability to overpower opponent, also there, amazing. Sustain, unmatched. Once Nasus gets level 9, I think it is, he gets enough lifesteal from his passive to never have to recall. And that's also what makes him so good and what makes him so entertaining to watch. I'm thinking back to Trick2G, Searches. Everyone who plays Nasus for the stacks, which I haven't really mentioned yet because I think even without his stacks, just him having enough Q damage is really good. And now we have Jax. Now Jax is probably the most famous split pusher, like throughout the entire lifespan of League of Legends. I think the meme always was 9 people would fight each other and somewhere off in the distance Jax is hitting the Nexus. His tower taking ability is awesome. He has an auto attack reset with his W. He does mixed damage, so he's really hard to itemize against. His wave clear is pretty good. His ability to overpower an opponent. I don't think there's a single champion late game that can 1v1 Jax. Sustain and escape, amazing. He basically hits all criterias in an amazing manner. And the only one that I think beats him pound for pound is probably Tryndamere. Now Tryndamere doesn't have an auto attack reset, but his 1v1 ability is way too good considering his ult. His sustain is amazing and early game accessible. Once he gets like 3 points in Q, you can't really push Tryndamere out of lane. His ability to overpower an opponent is also really good considering he has free 5 seconds of beating your ass while you can't do shit about it. His wave clear is insane. He is moving in lane while taking out the minions. And probably his biggest advantage to all of the other S tier champions, Jax, Nasus, Yorick, is that Tryndamere does not use mana. So he is not as pushable out of lane as the others are. You can probably ambush him and make him low, but all he really needs to do is find a jungle camp, smack that a couple times, and he is back to full HP and back to doing whatever he wants to do. Another thing is that Jax, Nasus and Yorick typically need to have teleport to survive the early game. Tryndamere does not need that. His most used summoner spells are Flash Ignite or Flash Ghost, and having an extra combat spell in a side lane makes him probably the best split pusher in the entire game in Season 12 from a top lane perspective. Now that's gonna be it for my personal split push tier list. If you disagree with where I placed a certain champion, tell me in the comments below. I'm quite curious to hear what you have to say, especially with the hard to place cases like say Yasuo, Yone, Fiora, Camille. Maybe Sion shouldn't be as high, maybe Tryndamere isn't the best split pusher. You're free to tell me, and I will be responding to your comments once the video goes live. But that's gonna be it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like the video. If you want to see more tier lists like this or other league content in general, do subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.